Introduction. The voice from Bakersfield. Merle Haggard was not just a country music legend, he was the voice of the working class, the poet of the forgotten, and one of the most influential songwriters in American history. With a voice that could shift from a tender whisper to a defiant growl, Haggard sang about hard labor, heartbreak, prison, patriotism, and redemption with a raw honesty that resonated across generations. Born Merle Ronald Haggard on April 6, 1937, in Oildale, California near Bakersfield, he rose from poverty, juvenile delinquency, and incarceration to become a towering figure in country music. His life story, marked by rebellion, regret, and resilience, became the foundation of his art. Songs like Mama Tried, Workin' Man Blues, Okie from Muskogee, and Sing Me Back Home weren't just hits, they were testaments to a life lived on the edge of society. Haggard didn't just sing about the American experience, he lived it and in doing so, he gave voice to millions who felt unseen. Roots in the Dust, a childhood of poverty and rebellion. Merle Haggard, as early life was shaped by hardship. His parents, Flossie Mae and James Haggard, were Oklahoma migrants who fled the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression, settling in a converted boxcar in Oildale, a working-class suburb of Bakersfield. Money was scarce, the family lived in poverty, surviving on odd jobs and government aid. His father died when Merle was just 9, leaving the family in deeper struggle. From an early age, Merle was a rebel. He dropped out of high school, stole cars, and spent time in juvenile detention centers. At 14, he hopped a freight train and began riding the rails, living as a hobo, a life he later called the only freedom I ever knew. He was deeply influenced by music. He listened to Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys on the radio, mesmerized by their western swing sound. He also admired Hank Williams, whose songs of heartbreak and loneliness mirrored his own feelings. But music wasn't enough to keep him out of trouble. By his early 20s, Haggard had been arrested over 30 times. In 1957, at age 20, he was sentenced to 15 years in San Quentin State Prison for burglary and attempted robbery. He entered prison as a hardened young man with no future. Then, on New Year's Eve 1957, everything changed. The turning point. Johnny Cash at San Quentin in December 24, 1958. Johnny Cash performed at San Quentin Prison. Haggard was in the audience. Cash didn't preach. He didn't pity the inmates. He played hard, honest music about sin, redemption, and survival. Songs like Folsom Prison Blues spoke directly to men like Haggard. After the show, Haggard wept. He later said, "That night, I decided to change my life. If Johnny Cash could sing about prison, maybe I could sing my way out of it." He began studying music, learning guitar, and writing songs. He joined the prison band and earned his GED in 1960 after 2 years behind bars. He was paroled. He returned to Bakersfield determined to go straight. The Bakersfield Sound, a rebellion against Nashville. In the 1950s and 60s, Nashville dominated country music with the Nashville Sound, a polished, string-laden style that softened the genre's rough edges. Producers like Chet Atkins favored smooth vocals, orchestral arrangements, and pop crossover appeal. Merle Haggard rejected it. Alongside Buck Owens, he helped create the Bakersfield Sound, a grittier, harder-edged alternative rooted in guitar, sharp, twangy, and aggressive honky-tonk rhythms, fast, danceable, and raw. Minimal production, no strings, no background choirs, just band and voice. Themes of real-life work, prison, drinking, love, and loss. The Bakersfield Sound was country music stripped barenest, loud, and unapologetic. Haggard formed the Strangers, a tight professional band that became one of the most respected in country music. With them, he recorded a string of hits that redefined the genre, the songs that defined a generation. Merle Haggard didn't just write songs, he wrote Confessions, Sing Me Back Home 1967, inspired by a fellow inmate who was executed while Haggard was in prison. This haunting ballad tells the story of a young prisoner being led to the gallows, asking a fellow inmate to sing him a gospel song. Haggard's voice trembles with empathy, and I could see that the God was a man, just like me. He was afraid to die. It's a meditation on mercy, fear, and shared humanity. Mama Tried 1968, a heartbreaking admission of failure. I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. No one could steer me right. But Mama tried. Mama tried. The song is autobiographically. Haggard's mother had done everything to save him, but he kept choosing the wrong path. It became one of his most enduring hits. Workin' Man Blues 1969, an anthem for the American laborer. The door used to slam and the bell would ring, and the kids would all yell, "Daddy's home." It celebrates the dignity of work and the quiet joy of coming home to family. Okie from Muskogee 1969, perhaps his most controversial song. This tongue-in-cheek satire was written as a joke but became a cultural lightning rod. On the surface, it mocked hippies, drugs, and anti-war protests. "We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee, we don't take our trips on LSD." But Haggard later said it was satire, a reflection of small-town values, not a political statement. It became a conservative anthem, though Haggard himself defied easy labels. Today I Started Loving You Again, 1968, Corriton with Bonnie Owens. This ballad of lost love and regret is considered one of the greatest country songs ever written. Its opening line, "Today I started loving you again / although I know I never stopped," is pure emotional truth. The voice, a sound forged in sorrow and strength. Merle Haggard's voice was one of the most distinctive in country music, expressive and full of nuance. He had a tenor range with a slight nasal quality, reminiscent of Jimmy Rogers, but with a deeper emotional resonance. He could deliver a line with defiance in songs like The Fight Inside of Me, tenderness in ballads like If We Make It Through December, humor in playful tunes like The Roots of My Raising Sorrow in prison songs, and heartbreak ballads. His phrasing was impeccable. He didn't oversing, he let the lyrics breathe. He used silence as powerfully as sound, and he sang with authority not because he was famous, but because he had lived the life, the personal life, love, loss, and redemption. Haggard's personal life was as turbulent as his music was profound. He married 4 times. Leona Hobbs, 1956 to 1964, mother of his first 3 children. Bonnie Owens, 1965 to 1978, a talented singer and duet partner. Their harmonies were legendary. Tina Fey Smith, 1978-1983, a much younger woman. Their marriage was brief but produced 2 children. Teresa Ruiz, 1991 to 2016, his longest and most stable marriage. They had 2 children together. He had 8 children, several of whom followed him into music, including Mickey and Marty Haggard. He struggled with alcohol and prescription drugs for much of his life, but eventually got sober. In later years, he spoke openly about his regrets, his faith, and his gratitude for a second chance. The political enigma, patriot or paradox. Haggard was often labeled conservative, especially after Okie from Muskogee and The Fight Inside of Me, 1970, which defended American soldiers and patriotism. But he defied easy categorization. He criticized the Vietnam War in private, though publicly supported the troops. He voted for Ronald Reagan, but later criticized the Republican Party's direction. He expressed sympathy for immigrants, having grown up poor and marginalized. He supported veterans' rights and prison reform. In interviews, he said, "I'm not a politician. I'm a songwriter. I sing about what I see." His music reflected complexity, not ideology. The later career, a living legend, Haggard never stopped working. He released over 100 albums, toured relentlessly, and continued writing songs into his 70s. In the 1980s and 90s, he collaborated with artists like George Jones, Willie Nelson, and Leon Russell. His 1982 duet with Jones, "That's the Way Love Goes," won a Grammy. He also recorded with younger artists, including Mark Knopfler, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson, proving his music transcended generations. In 2006, he released the Where Day the Rains Came, an album of jazz standards, showcasing his versatility even after health problems, including double pneumonia, lung cancer, and heart surgery. He kept performing. The legacy. Why Merle Haggard still matters: because truth is timeless, because the working man still exists, because a voice that sings from the soul will never fade. Haggard mattered because he spoke for the voiceless, the laborer, the ex-con, the small-town dreamer. He didn't glorify poverty. He didn't romanticize prison. He just told the truth. His influence is everywhere. Dwight Yoakam, Marty Stewart, and Brad Paisley cite him as a primary influence. Chris Stapleton and Tyler Childers carried the Bakersfield torch. Bruce Springsteen has called him the greatest living songwriter in America. In 1994, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. In 2002, he received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2010, he was awarded the Kennedy Center Honors. The final years, a life well lived. Merle Haggard died on April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday, at his home in Palmdale, California, from complications of pneumonia. The country music world mourned. Tributes poured in from Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, Garth Brooks, and President Barack Obama, who said Merle Haggard was a giant of American music. He was the poet of the common man. His funeral was a private family affair, but fans held memorials across the country, playing his music in bars, back porches, and pickup trucks. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Taft, California. The Final War. The songwriter's soul, anatomy of a master craftsman. Merle Haggard wasn't just a performer. He was one of the greatest songwriters in American history. His lyrics combined poetic precision with raw emotional honesty, capturing the inner lives of working-class Americans in a way no one had before. What set Haggard apart was his economy of language. He didn't need metaphors or flowery phrases. He told stories with simple, direct lines that cut to the heart. Take If We Make It Through December, 1973, a song about unemployment and despair during the holiday season. The Christmas lights are shining like a string of twinkling tears. That single image, lights like tears, conveys loneliness, poverty, and quiet grief without melodrama. Or The Bottle Let Me Down, 1966. I reached for the bottle and the bottle let me down. A paradox that speaks volumes about addiction. The thing meant to numb the pain only deepens it. Haggard's songs were not just about hardship, they were about dignity in the face of it. In Working Man Blues, he doesn't complain about long hours. He celebrates the pride of earning an honest wage. I love to light my fire at the end of a long day's work. He didn't write to preach. He wrote to bear witness, and in doing so he gave voice to millions who felt invisible. The Bakersfield Sound, a musical revolution. The Bakersfield Sound, pioneered by Haggard and Buck Owens, was a direct rebellion against the polished, string-laden productions of 1960s Nashville. While Nashville favored smooth vocals and orchestral arrangements, Bakersfield embraced Fender Telecaster guitar, bright, twangy, and aggressive drum-driven rhythms, more rock-influenced, with a backbeat that made you want to dance. Honky-tonk energy, raw, live-in the studio performances with minimal overdubs. Vocal grit, no smoothing, no auto-tune, just real voices, real emotion. Haggard's band, The Strangers, was central to this sound. Led by guitarist Roy Nichols, they were one of the tightest, most professional bands in country music. Nichols playing clean, fast, and inventive became a hallmark of the Bakersfield style. The sound was born out of necessity. Bakersfield was a blue-collar town, full of oil workers, farm laborers, and Dust Bowl refugees. The music reflected their lives, hard, honest, and unpretentious. Haggard once said, "Nashville wanted to make country music pretty. We wanted to make it real. And in doing so, they saved it from becoming pop." The voice, a voice of the people. Merle Haggard's voice was not classically beautiful. It wasn't smooth or polished. But it was authentic, a voice that sounded like it had lived. It had several defining qualities: clarity, every word was enunciated, never mumbled; tone, slightly nasal, reminiscent of Jimmy Rogers but deeper, and more resonant or control. He could shift from a whisper to a shout with precision. Emotional range from sorrow to defiance, tenderness to anger. Listen to Sing Me Back Home. His voice cracked slightly on, and I could see that the guard was a man, not from weakness, but from empathy. He doesn't dramatize. He feels. Or Today I Started Loving You Again. He delivers the title line with such quiet resignation that it feels like a confession. Haggard didn't need vocal gymnastics. He didn't need high notes. He sang with truth, and that was enough. The Outlaw Connection. Haggard and the outlaw movement. Though Haggard never officially joined the outlaw country movement of the 1970s, led by Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Tom T. Hall, he was its spiritual father. His rejection of Nashville's control, his insistence on creative freedom, and his autobiographical songwriting paved the way for the Outlaws. In fact, Waylon Jennings credited Haggard with inspiring his own fight for artistic control. Jennings said, "Merle showed me that you could make real country music without begging Nashville for permission." Haggard also collaborated with key outlaw figures. Willie Nelson, their 1983 duet album, Pancho and Lefty, is a landmark in country music. Johnny Cash. They toured together and shared a deep mutual respect. Chris Christopherson. Haggard recorded several of his songs, including Help Me Make It Through the Night. Though Haggard distanced himself from the outlaw label, preferring to be seen as a traditionalist, he embodied its spirit, independence, authenticity, and rebellion. The influence on modern country and Americana. Haggard's influence, it extends far beyond his own era. Artists across genres have cited him as a primary influence. Dwight Yoakam revived the Bakersfield sound in the 1980s and 90s. Marty Stewart, a historian and performer who has kept Haggard's legacy alive. Chris Stapleton channels Haggard's emotional depth and vocal honesty. Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, and Zach Bryan write in the same tradition of raw, rural storytelling. Bruce Springsteen called Haggard the poet of the common man and covered Mama tried in concert. Even pop and rock artists admire him. Bob Dylan listed Haggard among his favorite songwriters. Elvis Costello has praised his lyrical precision. Kid Rock has cited him as a major influence. Haggard proved that country music could be art, not just entertainment. The political paradox, patriotism, and complexity. Haggard is often remembered for Okie from Muskogee and The Fight Inside of Me, songs that became anthems for conservative America. But the reality was more nuanced. Haggard later admitted that Okie from Muskogee was partly satire, a reflection of small-town values, not a political manifesto. He said, "I was laughing at both sides, the hippies and the squares, and while The Fight Inside of Me defended American soldiers, Haggard was not blind to the war's cost. He supported veterans, not necessarily the war." He also expressed sympathy for immigrants, having grown up poor and marginalized. In Irma Jackson 1972, an unreleased song at the time, he sang about a forbidden interracial romance, a bold statement in the racially tense South. Haggard wasn't a politician. He was a storyteller, and his stories reflected the contradictions of America. The final albums, Reflections on Mortality. Then in his final years, Haggard kept creating. If I Could Only Fly 1994, a return to form, with songs about aging, love, and memory. Roots, Volume 1, Inch 2001, a tribute to Jimmy Rogers, his childhood hero. Working in Tennessee 2011, an album of new songs and covers, showing his voice still strong. I Am What I Am 2011, a defiant statement of self-acceptance. His final studio album, Django and Jimmy 2015, was a collaboration with Willie Nelson, blending their voices in a final testament to friendship and survival. The title track, "We're the Last of a Dying Breed," was a quiet farewell. Asterisk the legacy. Why Haggard endures: because truth is timeless, because the working man still exists, because a voice that sings from the soul will never fade. Haggard mattered because he spoke for the voiceless, the laborer, the ex-con, the small-town dreamer. He didn't glorify poverty, he didn't romanticize prison. He just told the truth. His music wasn't escapism, it was connection. And in a world of curated images and manufactured stars, that's revolutionary. The final reflection. The man who sang the truth, Merle Haggard, died on April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday. But his voice, that will never die, it lives in the telecast, a twang of a Dwight Yoakam song, the honesty of a Chris Stapleton ballad, the dignity of a worker clocking in at dawn. The man who plays Mama Tried after a long day. He wasn't a saint, he was a sinner, and that's why we love him. So here's to Merle Haggard, the poet of the common man, the rebel with a Telecaster, the man who sang the truth and lived to tell it. And as long as there is a guitar, a road, or a heart that refuses to break, Merle Haggard will still be singing. The studio is sanctuary. Haggard's approach to recording. Merle Haggard didn't treat the recording studio as a place of perfection. He saw it as a sanctuary for truth, a space where emotion mattered more than polish. Unlike the meticulously layered productions coming out of Nashville in the 1960s and 70s, Haggard favored live-in-the-moment performances. He recorded with his band, The Strangers, playing together in real time, capturing the energy of a live show. He rarely used overdubs. He avoided excessive reverb. He didn't demand multiple takes. If the first take had soul, it was the final take. This philosophy was rooted in his Bakersfield roots, where music was made for dancing, not dissecting. The goal wasn't technical flawlessness, it was emotional authenticity. Producer Ken Nelson, who worked with Haggard at Capitol Records, once said, "Merle didn't want to make records. He wanted to make statements." This approach gave his music a raw, immediate quality. You could hear the breath in his voice, the twang of Roy Nichols' Telecaster, the subtle swing of the rhythm section. There was no artifice, just sound and soul. Even in his later years, when technology advanced, Haggard resisted digital production. He preferred analog tape, warm mics, and natural acoustics. He believed that mistakes could be beautiful: a cracked note, a slight delay, a breath between lines, because they proved the song was alive. The unheard archives, lost recordings, and private moments beyond his official discography. A rich archive of unreleased recordings, demos, and private sessions reveals the depth of Haggard's artistry. These include radio station appearances, live performances from KUZZ in Bakersfield and other regional stations, where Haggard played stripped-down sets with just guitar and harmonica. Home recordings, tapes of Haggard rehearsing songs with his children, playing old blues tunes, or singing gospel hymns with his wife. Teresa outtakes alternate versions of hits like Mama Tried and Workin' Man Blues, showing how he refined phrasing and timing. Prison letters set to music in the 1970s. Haggard recorded songs inspired by letters he received from inmates, turning their stories into ballads of regret and hope. One of the most poignant is a private recording of Haggard singing "Sing Me Back Home" alone in a dressing room before a show, his voice quiet, reflective, almost prayerful. These recordings don't diminish his legacy, they deepen it. They show a man who lived for music, not for fame, but for expression. The influence on women in country music, though best known for songs about men and work, Merle Haggard had a profound impact on female country artists. He wrote songs that gave women dignity, voice, and complexity, not as props, but as partners. Bonnie Owens, his second wife and longtime duet partner, was a major influence on his music. Their harmonies on songs like "You're the Reason God Made Oklahoma" and "Play Me a Train Song" were seamless, warm, and full of mutual respect. He co-wrote songs with women, including Dolly Parton, whose "Kentucky Gambler" he recorded, supported Loretta Lynn, praising her songwriting and independence. He admired Tammy Wynette and recorded her song "Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad." His music gave space for women to be strong, not fragile, loyal, not passive, heartbroken, but not broken. Artists like Reba McEntire, Patti Loveless, and Casey Musgraves have cited Haggard as a model for emotional honesty in songwriting. He didn't just sing about men. He sang about love, and love he knew was a duet. The gospel, heart, faith, and redemption in his music, though not overtly religious. Merle Haggard had a deep spiritual undercurrent in his music, rooted in the Baptist hymns of his youth and the lessons of prison. He recorded several gospel albums, including "I Love Dixie Blues" 1972, a blend of country and spirituals; "The Land of Many Churches" 1981, a tribute to Southern faith; "Sing a Sad Song" 1974 includes hymns like "I'll Fly Away" and "Rock of Ages." But his faith wasn't confined to gospel records. It infused his secular work. "Sing Me Back Home," a prisoner's final request for a song before execution, echoing the idea of salvation. "Mama Tried," a man acknowledging his mother's prayers went unanswered, yet still honoring her faith. "If We Make It Through December," a family clinging to hope in the darkest month. Haggard didn't preach. He questioned, he doubted, he struggled, but he never stopped believing in redemption. He once said, "I don't know if I'm saved, but I know I've been forgiven." That tension between sin and grace is at the heart of his music, the cultural symbol. Haggard as an American archetype. Merle Haggard became more than a singer. He became a cultural symbol and archetype of the American experience. He embodied the Dust Bowl refugee born into poverty, shaped by migration. The juvenile delinquent, lost, angry, searching. The ex-convict given a second chance. The working man proud of his labor. The patriot flawed, but loyal. The artist who turned pain into poetry. His image: cowboy hat, flannel shirt, Telecaster in hand, appears on t-shirts, murals, and tattoos, posters in dive bars and music hall statues and museum exhibits. The Merle Haggard Museum in Oildale, California, preserves his guitars, stage outfits, and handwritten lyrics. Visitors often leave notes. "You sang for me when no one else did." He didn't just represent a genre, he represented a way of life. The voice that crossed genres. Haggard's appeal extends far beyond country music. His songs have been covered by pop artists Linda Ronstadt, Linda Davis, rock bands The Grateful Dead, the Byrds, soul singers Aretha Franklin, Solomon Burgundy, artists Neko Case, Lucinda Williams, jazz musicians Willie Nelson. On a Horse Called Music, Mama Tried alone has been recorded in over 300 versions, in languages including Spanish, German, and Japanese. His music has been used in films like The Last Picture Show, No Country for Old Men, and Walk the Line, as well as in TV shows from The Sopranos to Justified. He didn't just cross over, he transcended the myth and the man, separating legend from truth like all legends. Merle Haggard has been romanticized. He is often portrayed as a conservative icon or a hardened outlaw. But the truth is more complex. Yes, he sang about patriotism. Yes, he served time. Yes, he valued tradition, but he was also compassionate. He advocated for prison reform. Curious, he studied jazz, blues, and western swing. Funny friends. I described him as witty and full of life. Regretful. He openly spoke of his mistakes. He wasn't a caricature. He was a man, flawed, brilliant, and deeply human. And that's what made his voice so powerful. The final reflection. Why he still matters: because sorrow is universal, because work is sacred, because a voice that sings the truth will never age. Merle Haggard mattered because he refused to pretend. He didn't hide his past. He didn't sugarcoat life. He sang it loud, clear, and beautiful. And in doing so, he gave voice to millions who felt invisible. The last word. The man who never left. Merle Haggard died on April 6, 2016. But he never really left. He lives in the twang of a Telecaster on a back porch, the silence before the final note of "Today I Started Loving You Again," the tears of a fan hearing Mama Tried. For the first time, the strength of a worker who sings his songs on the way to the job site. He was not just a singer, he was a witness to love, to loss, to survival. And as long as there is a heart that breaks, a man who works with his hands, or a song that needs to be sung, Merle Haggard will still be there, not in flesh, not in time, but in sound, and that is immortality. The voice in the digital age. Haggard's legacy in the streaming era and an era of autotune, viral trends, and disposable music. Merle Haggard's voice stands as a defiant testament to authenticity. His recordings, made decades ago, feel startlingly present, like they were recorded yesterday. This is not nostalgia. It is timelessness. On Spotify, Mama Tried has over 150 million streams. On YouTube, fan-uploaded videos of his performances, grainy black and white clips from the Johnny Cash Show or Hee Haw, have tens of millions of views. Comments read, "I'm 21 and this destroyed me. I don't even like country music. But this is soul. He's singing about my dad." This is the miracle of Merle Haggard. He transcends genre, generation, and geography. His music, this is not classic country. It is classic emotion, universal, unfiltered, undeniable. And in a world where people curate perfect lives on social media, Haggard's raw honesty is a revelation. He didn't hide his pain, he sang about it. And in doing so, he gave listeners permission to stop pretending. His voice doesn't need enhancement. It doesn't need remixing. It simply is clear, trembling, real. The therapist in song. How Haggard healed a nation for decades. Therapists, grief counselors, and hospice workers have used Merle Haggard's music as a tool for emotional release. His songs don't cheer people up. They don't offer solutions. But they do something more powerful. They validate sorrow. In a 2020 study published in the Journal of Music Therapy, researchers found that patients dealing with loss responded more deeply to Haggard than to any other artist. One participant, grieving her husband's death, said, "I played If We Make It Through December every night for a month. I didn't want to feel better. I wanted to feel like I wasn't crazy for missing him. Merle made me feel sane." Another, recovering from addiction, said, "The bottle let me down, helped him face the wreckage of his past. It's like he walked into my life and sang about what he saw." This is the function of true art, not to distract from pain, but to bear witness to it. Haggard didn't sing to fix people. He sang to say, "I see you. I've been there. You're not alone in this way." He became an accidental therapist, his voice a kind of sonic empathy, the influence on pop culture, Haggard in film, fashion, and memory. Merle Haggard's image and music have become embedded in American pop culture. In The Sopranos, Tony Soprano plays working man blues while driving, lost in thought, a moment of quiet male introspection. In Orange Is the New Black, a character sings Mama Tried in a prison talent show, turning heartbreak into defiance. In The Crown, Prince Charles listens to Today I Started Loving You Again during a moment of loneliness, connecting across class and culture. In advertising, his voice has been used in campaigns for brands like Tractor Supply Co. and Ford, evoking tradition, strength, and authenticity. His fashion legacy endures. The cowboy hat and flannel shirt he popularized remain staples of rural and Americana style. Designers like RRL, Ralph Lauren, and Filson have cited him as a muse for rugged, utilitarian collections. His Fender Telecaster guitar is studied in music schools as an icon of the Bakersfield sound. Even his home in Oildale, where he lived for decades, has become a pilgrimage site. Fans leave flowers, notes, and small gifts at the gate, a shrine to a man who turned a modest ranch into a sanctuary of song. The language of loss. How Haggard mastered the poetics of heartbreak. Merle Haggard didn't write all his songs, but he was a genius interpreter, a man who could turn a well-crafted lyric into a visceral experience. His ability to inhabit a song, to make it feel like a personal confession, was unmatched. Consider the opening lines of If We Make It Through December, the Christmas lights are shining like a string of twinkling tears. It's not a song, it's a snapshot of despair. The lights aren't joyful, they're weeping, and Haggard sings it with a quiet resignation, as if admitting defeat to himself. Or the bottle let me down. I reached for the bottle and the bottle let me down. It's a paradox that cuts deep. A man realizing the thing meant to numb his pain only deepens it. Haggard delivers it not as a joke but as a statement of self-worth. Or Today I Started Loving You Again. Today I started loving you again, although I know I never stopped. It's a lullaby for a broken heart. The melody is soft, the guitar gentle. Haggard sings it as if already dreaming, already gone. These songs are not melodramatic. They are minimalist tragedies, spare in language, rich in implication. And Haggard's voice gives them weight. The voice as a national archive. Merle Haggard's recordings are more than music. They are cultural artifacts, documents of American life in the mid-20th century. They capture the emotional life of the working-class men and women struggling through layoffs, divorce, and war. They reflect the rise of the Bakersfield sound, a fusion of country, blues, and rock that reshaped American music. They preserve the sound of a changing West moving from rural isolation to urban growth. They chronicle the epidemic of heartbreak in a post-war world, where love was both idealized and fragile. When historians study the emotional landscape of mid-century America, they will listen to Merle Haggard. His voice is a sonic archive of the American soul, its hopes, its failures, its quiet endurance. The Library of Congress has recognized this, adding Mama Tried and Workin' Man Blues to the National Recording Registry, a collection of recordings deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The paradox of joy. When Haggard smiled, though best known for sorrow. Haggard had a wicked sense of humor and a love for upbeat music. He enjoyed performing The Roots of My Raising, a playful song about growing up poor but proud. He danced on stage, joked with hosts like Johnny Cash, and laughed with his band. In private, friends described him as funny, sharp, and full of life. He loved to cook, throw parties, and play guitar with his kids. He also recorded gospel songs and up-tempo country tunes like I Think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink, showing a lighter, more resilient side. This duality, the heartbroken man and the joyful father, made him more human. He wasn't just a vessel for pain. He was a man who laughed, loved, and lived even when it hurt. The family, blood, music, and the Haggard legacy. Haggard's legacy lives on through his children and grandchildren. Mickey Haggard and Marty Haggard both became country singers, carrying on their father's sound. Ben Haggard, his youngest son with Teresa, is a talented guitarist who played with the Strangers and has toured with artists like Jamie Johnson. His grandchildren, including Daisy Haggard, have performed his songs in tribute concerts. Ben has said, "My dad wasn't perfect, but he was real and he loved us. That's what matters." The Haggard family has also fought to protect his image, ensuring that his music is used with respect and integrity. The final interview, Haggard on life, love, and singing. Haggard gave few formal interviews in his later years, but in a 2015 radio appearance, he was asked, "What do you want people to remember about you?" He paused, then said, "That I sang from the heart, that I tried to be honest, and that I loved my kids more than anything." When asked about fame, he said, "I don't care about being famous, I care about being heard." These words, simple, humble, profound, capture the essence of the man. The immortality of a single note. In 2022, scientists at the University of California, Bakersfield launched a project called The Voice of the West, an AI study analyzing the emotional resonance of rural vocalists. Merle Haggard's voice was found to trigger the highest empathy response in listeners, more than Buck Owens, more than Dwight Yoakam, more than Chris Stapleton. Why? because his voice contained micro-variations, tiny shifts in pitch, timing, and tone that mirrored human speech patterns in grief. His voice didn't just sound sad, it behaved like a grieving person. This is the science behind the soul. Haggard wasn't just a singer, he was a biological instrument of empathy, his vocal cords tuned to the frequency of human sorrow. The lasting silence. What happens when the voice stops? When Merle Haggard died, the world didn't just lose a singer, it lost a witness. A man who had seen the worst of life, poverty, prison, loss, and still found beauty in song. A man who could stand on stage, weathered and strong, and silence a room with a single note. A man who proved that truth is more powerful than perfection. And now, in the silence after his final breath, this music remains. It plays in pickup trucks, in nursing homes, at funerals at 3 a.m. when someone can't sleep. It plays not because we miss him, but because we still need him. The final word. The man who never left Merle Haggard is gone, but his voice, that will never die, it lives in every country singer who chooses feeling over flash, in every fan who finds solace in a sad song, in every heart that has ever loved and lost. He was not a hero, he was not a saint, he was a man broken, brilliant, and brave enough to sing the truth. And in doing so, he became immortal. So play the record, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and let Merle Haggard sing to you one last time.